morning, Esty.
Good morning.
So today we're going to talk about Purim.
Yeah.
And I think the reason we're going to speak about it is because Purim is about to come up. And if I could tell you that every single client that's coming into my office, the thing on their mind is Purim.
Yeah.
Either how they love it or how they're excited for it, but also how they have memories from it and what to do because there's certain parts of it that are hard.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's the big topic right now. And over my years of experience, every time it comes up to really any holiday, there's a lot of feelings about it.
Mm-hmm.
But Purim, I think, is one of the bigger ones. One of the bigger ones that bring up more emotions and more feelings about what's going on.
Yeah. It's funny because when we think about like other Jewish holidays, like they're longer. Like Purim, I would say, is pretty short. It's one day. It goes by really fast.
It could be like 3 days, though, because there's like the fast day first, then Purim,
Yes.
then the Shushan Purim. So like kind of feels like a 3-day package because you have your kids home for 3 days.
Right.
For people that have their kids home, that's how my mind works. Yom Tif is now as many days as you are home. Pesach is 7 weeks. I'm kidding.
Pesach is forever.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's sort of like.
But it's the shorter ones.
It's the shorter
ones of the holidays.
Things, like it's the shorter ones. And so therefore like, okay, it's 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, but then it's over with. But somehow like so many emotions come up with that day and so many associations come up with that day. So we wanted to talk a little bit so that way we can like explore like what others feel about Purim and how to make your Purim more enjoyable.
Yeah. And I think this is so important to like kind of go through like between myself, my friends and clients from my practice and yourself and your friends and clients from your practice, all the different reasons why people like and dislike Purim or what they find hard about Purim or what they find triggering about Purim. I think it's so helpful because I think that people might be suffering and they don't know why. They just know that they don't like it or they just, something's unpleasant or they're just in a bad mood, but they don't actually know why. And when you know why, you already have half the answer.
Exactly.
Because you know what you can do about it or what not to do about it, but at least you know what's going on for you underneath.
Right. There's something so powerful about naming it and labeling it. And, it reminds me of Purim. So generally, like to dress up, get into the mood of things. Like when I was single with my friends, Purim was such a fun day. Like we would, all go together. Like at some points I was working for a school, so the kids would come over and, you get to see all them with their parents and their costumes. It's just like exciting and making the shalach manos for them. And then we would go to like different hospitals and, sing for elderly patients and sick patients. It was just like a fun day. There was like lots of good memories by the Suda. Though, like, as I got older, like, I think it shifted for me a little bit because it's not the same, right? Obviously, in everything in life, it's always evolving. And, I'm thinking back to last year, like, what Purim was for me. And you remember we dressed up as clowns. Mm-hmm. And I was so excited. I probably prepared, like, a month in advance, like, ordering all the things on Amazon and, like, preparing all the boxes, like, the little clown boxes and, like, the red noses. And I was, like, on a high just preparing for it. By the time Purim came in the morning, we came home from Megillah. And we only dress up after. And my husband can't find the shoe for his clown costume. And all of a sudden, like, I find myself getting so upset and disappointed and feeling like I've worked so hard to make this so exciting. And I want it today to be the funnest day ever. And I want the costumes to look amazing. And I want the shalach manos to be great. And I want everybody to just be happy and have a good time. And this is going to ruin my entire day because you don't have the shoe of your clown costume. And I remember like all that excitement just like dropped in 1 second. And I started like losing it. And I was upset at myself because it's like, wait, you're supposed to be happy today. You're supposed to be excited today. You've looked forward to this. And now your emotions aren't listening to what it's supposed to be feeling on this day. Yeah. And so like, I think like that part for me, like it totally took me off course. And it took me a while to like get back to it and saying like, Purim is going to be what it's going to be. I can prepare as much as possible, but the expectation of today has to be the funnest day in the world and I can't feel any bad feelings and I can't be upset about anything and everything just has to work out. That's what was making me upset. Like if I would have expected things to go wrong, I think I would have took that more in stride and be like, okay, you're going to be like, a one-legged clown. Right. But instead, and maybe that's part of being a clown is that you only have like one shoe on and, makes it really funny. But my emotions and my expectations.
Like if you've been dressed up only with like one.
Right. It would be funny, right?
And then walking around with a sneaker.
At that point, like, when everybody's drunk, like nobody even notices. And like, it looks like they probably lost it in the street.
Did he not have a shoe at the end?
He didn't find it. No.
So he wore one shoe?
He wore one.
I don't even remember. You see, look at that.
Yeah. Yeah. You probably thought like it just fell off in the middle. Like,
I don't know if I even noticed.
Right. Nobody's really noticing.
Nobody cares.
Exactly.
That's the lesson of life.
But it's for the picture, right? We want it for the picture. But I think our expectations really, really set the bar so high that if it doesn't happen, we're then really disappointed.
Yeah. I think like disappointment, like that feeling that comes up for people is hard. It's hard to, manage your expectations versus what Purim was as a child and what it is as an adult and how it's changed. And depending where you are in your life, if you are, post high school or you just got married or you just have kids, like they're all transitions. And I think like holidays mark that. Like, oh, last year I was doing this. And last year was so fun because we did this, but now this year I happen to be sick. Or, you know what I mean? Let's say someone who's pre and post married, like someone could be like, oh, last year I was married and this year I'm divorced. So like, it's kind of like a remembrance of like the different stages you were last year or the year before. And people could be disappointed of where they are in life.
Yeah, it's like a comparison. Like it reminds you, like we always are reflecting back and comparing.
Last year at this time.
Right.
2 years ago at this time, we did this and this and this. And, now I'm struggling with this.
Right. And, the thing is that like Yontif is always a time to compare and contrast to like what was and what is now. But it's also that our memories aren't always accurate. What we tend to think about things in the past as being a whole lot better than they actually were.
Right.
Like because we don't really remember things. We remember our feelings about things, but the memories, like over time, things become better. And so therefore, like when we're comparing, it's not really an accurate evaluation between the two. And so even if Purim was amazing last year, or even if it was not amazing, we're going to remember it as it was amazing or it was better than it was.
Yeah. I think that Purim has a lot of messages. Right? We were people who were taught Purim in school, the Megillah story. There's just a lot of lessons. There's a lot of messages that were taught, and some of them may not resonate with somebody, and some of them may struggle with some of those messages that are taught.
Yeah, like there's just first of all, like Esther is like the savior. How in a sense of like that a woman has the power to save everything.
And I think they also talk about her modesty, right?
Yes, a lot.
So that's like
that.
Then like take it in religious institutions. Then like, oh, look at her modesty. Modesty will save you. Modesty is what saves you. Modesty. Modesty.
Yes.
Modesty. So there's a lot of society pressure or religious pressure there.
Yeah, there's also like the bad guy. Like at the end of the day, he gets justice, because Haman is hung, and Vashti also gets killed, and so it's like the good people always prevail, and the bad people always get what's coming to them.
Right, but we don't always see that in life,
exactly.
And that can be hard.
Right, I think like there's also like this aspect of like it's not what you appear to be. Like everything is like a facade of like you're in a costume, but like who's under the costume, and like
that's it's all about the mask.
Yeah,
and then people get to dress up as something, and that might resonate with people of wanting to be something different, right? This is a time where everybody's dressing up different. Everyone's dressing up funny. And then it might bring up for people like, yeah, who I am to the world is actually a facade.
Right.
Like it brings up the whole topic of like, who am I as a real person? Who am I presenting to the world? How do I want to be presented to the world?
Right.
And that's like a really, really like deep and complicated topic. And if someone doesn't even know that that's what they're thinking, but there's just like something's bothering them.
Right.
And then really it's this like huge complex conversation needs to happen of like, who are you as a person?
Right.
That's huge.
And also like feeling split between like the person I show and the person I feel I am.
Yeah. When I worked in Evolve, which was an intensive outpatient program for Jewish teens suffering from, alcohol or drug abuse or mental health issues, we would do different group processes depending on what was coming up during the year, right? And like any hospital, like when it's a holiday, you talk about holiday. So because it was Jewish, we talk about Purim. And I remember the art therapist doing like a mask activity with everyone. And these were the kind of topics I talked about when it came closer to Purim of like, who do you present to the world? How do you want to be presented to the world? What part of you is hidden? What part of you do you wish was hidden? Like all that concept. Like this is like, and these are not things that people really think about on a regular day. Like we don't sit and think about, I mean, we do because we're therapists. But like, I think most people don't sit and think about like, who am I? Who do I want to be? What persona am I presenting to the world? And how I wish I could take off that mask.
I think also like being drunk takes off that mask. Right, which is so interesting. On the one hand, there's the mask, but on the other hand, as somebody drinks, like their parts of their true self come in. Like, don't they say, like, somebody is like their anger comes out. Like,
yeah, I mean, drinking is. We didn't even get to that yet. That's I think a huge deal. Why people like, but why maybe a lot of women dislike Purim, right? And we were talking about it, and I loved when you're like, okay, so like when you were like digging deeper, and you're like, okay, but why? What about drinking? Don't you like? I was like, yeah, I guess if I went around and drunk the whole day, then that would be fun for me. And then I think for a lot of people, they're kind of like, wait, why is the man the one that gets to drink the whole day? And as let's say a girl who's not married, if they would drink, that would be like scandalous, right? And then as a married woman, like, it's just obvious that you're the one that's taking care of the kids, you know? And then that could bring up the feeling of like, wait, what's my role here? Why does this? And it was never discussed. I don't sit down with my husband and say like, are you drinking or am I drinking this Purim? I should try that. That would be quite funny. But I'm saying like, you know, there's certain, let's say, household chores that people in some, you know, relationships discuss. Like you do the dishes, I do the garbage. But, you know, I find that people don't, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's people that are like, actually, we discuss it. But it's not, I'm taking for granted that in the circles that I know, people are not sitting down like, okay, you're going to drink and I'm going to take care of the kids this Purim. We can swap next year. Right. It's just like understood. And I think that it could bring up for people like, what is my role here as a woman? Like that whole huge, you know, why is this gender you know, inequality, or is this fair, or is this not fair, or who says it's supposed to be this way?
When I moved to Israel when I got married and I lived in Israel, so the first year I dressed up, but I was told that you can't really dress up.
Right.
Like
In Israel, it's like super scandalous to dress up. Right. That's my seminary teacher told me.
So it's like, you know, those costumes that are sort of costumes, but not really a costume. Right. So that's what I did the first year. And after that, I realized I was the only woman who was doing anything. And then for years, I did not dress up. It made Purim so sad for me because like so much of Purim is like getting into it and I couldn't. And it was seen as like, it's not sneeze for a woman to dress up. In America, like I'm so happy that we're able to dress up because it's just fun and exciting. But there, like that to me was a huge loss of, why could the men dress up and I can't? And I understand it, you know, just in terms of like nobody does it there and then you don't want to stand out. But it felt like it was something that that was being taken away from me, that I always grew up as being normal of. I didn't realize it was a bad thing to do this. Right. You know, but now that I'm able to dress up, like I find it like that makes it exciting for me because I can be more involved. Like the more involved we can be in Purim and the more connected to it we can be, then I feel like it ends up being better. And like, so that brings us to the question of like, well, if women aren't able to get drunk, if women aren't, and I'm not saying that women should, you know, but hypothetically, like if we look at it from this lens, like they can't get drunk, they also are not necessarily dressing up. I recommend dressing up because it is a lot of fun. You know, they're the ones that are doing the Suda and cooking and preparing. They're the ones that are then like preparing the Shalach Manos as well, watching the kids. Like then in what ways can they connect to it to feel like they're a part of it and that they belong? Right.
And it's also supposed to be this fun day and it's like not fun. I'm not dressing up. I'm not drinking. I'm running after kids that are drinking from candy while my husband's like dancing on tables. Like, this is not fun. It's supposed to be fun.
It's also like there's the scary element of like, you know, being around drunk people. You know, on the one hand, it's hilarious, but caretaking for a drunk person is not hilarious.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of like triggers that I heard from clients over the years of like drunk. People were abused when people were drunk in their history. Religious holidays, people were abused. Yeah. And just that whole concept of like religion, drunkenness together is extremely triggering for many people. I mean, a regular person that hasn't had any abuse around drunk, it's still like, ew, drunk. You know, when you get married and you have a husband that starts drinking, people tend to like be a little bit more like, you get used to it, exposed to it, I guess. So it's not so scary. But like thinking about before I was married, it's like, ew, stay away from me. You know, anyone who's had any history of abuse connected to drunk, it's a heart-wrenching day. Anyone who has anything connection themselves suffering from an alcohol addiction or know a family member suffering from alcohol addiction, it's a heart-wrenching day.
Yeah. No, for sure. Because like it's everybody around them. Everyone around them is drinking and drunk, and it's definitely going to bring back all those memories of loss of control and what can happen. And even if nothing happens, there's the potential for something to happen, and also there's the history where something that did happen. So that also, it's like, it's interesting because on the one hand it's Yantif, on the other hand, like it's surrounded by drunkenness. But I want to like clarify because like I don't think like the way that people the way that it plays out is not the way that it was intended always, and that's an important distinction of like, is this like, you know, this is a day where people are just drunk. Like, I don't know if that's always like how it was or how it was supposed to be.
It's not how it's meant to be, and it's probably not a lot in a lot of people's homes.
Right. Like either. I grew up like I grew up and nobody was drunk. Like at least in my house. Like not my father, not my brothers, like nothing in that sense, not my uncles. So I didn't really grow up with that, like, you know, the little kid holding the father's hand as he's like limping back and forth, like home from shul.
But I think today, most people, that's what's happening, even if it wasn't meant to be. And that's not the day. The holiday isn't meant for everyone to go around and be drunk. That's not what it's meant to be. And it's not how some of us grew up, and it's not how it is in some homes. I think most it is. I mean, like these yeshiva bachrim going from house to house, drunk like crazy. Like when I have a child that age, it's probably gonna be really hard for me to these kids are like, 16?
Yeah.
Younger? And they're going around drinking. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's a good point that you brought up. It's not meant to be, but the fact is, it is that way. I think in most places, and that's why it's so hard for people.
Yeah. I mean, I've just had this memory of like when Erev Shabbos was Purim. And so therefore, like most people go into Purim drunk. So I remember like being in Rehavia, like we had like a simcha that week. And so we were going to the simcha hall. And I remember walking through the streets and on every single like, sidewalk corner, like there was just like another guy throwing up and another guy just like laying there. And it was like on the one hand, like, oh my goodness, this is Shabbos.
Right.
But then again, like here they had such an amazing day for themselves. And like this is how they're going into the weekend. Like
It happens to be, I love Friday Purims because it's just so much shorter. So I find like it's more contained.
Yeah.
And I think that like that for me, at least is something that works. Like if I can contain that day, right? Because the day is like all over the place. There's, let's say, kids cranky from candy. There's people coming over the whole day. It's having to go visit all these people on the list. It's drunk playing into the factor. It's the long Suda at night. It's late bedtimes. It just gets overwhelming. I've personally found over the years, the thing that works for me is to try to contain it. So if that means midday when it gets a little quieter, instead of running out to another person, putting the kids for a nap or putting them in front of the TV for a little bit and having a little bit of downtime and just like, okay, clean up the house, lay down in bed, look at my phone for a little bit, relax, and now I can go on to the Suda.
Right.
So I remember one year that we just didn't do that at all. We were just running. I collapsed by the Suda already. I was like, I want to go home. My husband's like, well, it's 5:30. We didn't even eat yet. And I was like, no, I want to go home. So I finally containing the day, structuring the day, coming up with like a clear set of like, how is today going to look?
I love that.
What am I hitting today? What am I not hitting today? Like, yeah, obviously we want to be flexible if like something else comes up. But like overall, like let's sit down for a few minutes and discuss who are we going to, who are we not going to.
Yeah.
For me, my kids are young, so I understand like when your kids are older, I don't do the teachers thing. I give them the shalach manas at school. I'm not going to teachers. Like I feel like my son is young enough that he doesn't need to go to his teachers yet. So instead of driving around Muncie, and Muncie gets crazy, of driving around and going to places, let me just bring the teachers their gifts before school.
Smart.
And you know what?
Yeah, I have so many memories of just like sitting in traffic for hours. Like you should not be driving on Purim like midday.
People do. They go from Brooklyn to Lakewood for the meal, from Muncie to Lakewood, from here to here. So
yeah, we did that last year. It was the biggest mistake. Like
I was kind of thinking it's kind of nice though because then you have an hour and a half break of just in the car.
No, but when I'm sitting in that car, if there's any traffic, I get so where it's like I'm wasting my whole Purim like sitting in the car on traffic.
Right.
Like
because it goes back to like for you at least, like this is supposed to be fun.
Exactly.
I'm wasting my time, and I'm just kind of like, how can we have this most relaxed, peaceful day?
We're so different in our approach.
Kind of sitting in the car the whole day kind of sounds relaxing. Maybe I will drive to Baltimore for my Purim Suda this year.
There was one year where COVID year, where it broke out around Purim time, and so in Israel everybody was deciding, should we go back, should we not go back? Like, are we going to get locked here? Are we not going to get locked in here?
Purim in Muncie that year or in New York, we didn't realize it was COVID yet.
It didn't hit you, but by us
started.
it hit already.
I remember.
And so everyone was deciding like whether they should go. The problem was that if they would go on Purim, they would miss their whole Purim on the plane. And there were a couple of people who missed Purim that year because they took the flight home because they didn't know what it would be. And so I'm thinking like maybe that would have worked for you.
Take a plane on Purim.
Not a bad idea. Yeah, because then you lose the time difference, the 7 hours.
It's not that I hate Purim.
But you know what? Right.
I'm just talking about I'd like to have it. I'd like to make sure that I have downtime and it's a contained, structured day. I don't like this like craziness. I try really hard to give the kids breakfast in the morning and for myself to eat normal food. I don't want to eat candy the whole day. Honestly, there's no like, when people complain like that my kids ate candy the whole day, like I kind of steal the shalach manas and like hide it. As it's coming, it's throwing out and putting away. Like there's one, like I try as much as possible. You can have a candy now. There's not another candy for an hour.
Don't you appreciate like the people who give like real food in their shalach manos?
Yeah.
Those are the best. But I want to like, just to take a step back because what we're talking about, like, getting through Purim or like avoiding it or escaping it, like that was a theme that came up a lot in the sessions like that I've had recently, where people are saying like, what can I do to like get rid of the Purim day? Or what can I do to just like make it past as quick as possible? And like I understand it, needing to work on Purim in order to like make the time pass, or needing to volunteer more, or needing to like go to the basement and just like watch some movies for that in order to like make it pass. But I think what happens is that when people make those decisions, like they feel guilty because they feel like they should be doing something else on that day, and so like I think it is normal for people to be doing those things. Like it does happen. They wish it wasn't that way, but at the same time, like they're not sure how else to fill it, and the feelings and the associations and the expectations are just so strong that then they feel like they need to like just like let's get through this and let it be over with already, which is sad.
Yeah, and and something that might want to be worked through of like what's coming up for you that makes this day hard, because at the end of the day we don't want to like survive something, we want to thrive through it. So that doesn't mean that you have to run around and go have the funnest Purim. And if going to the basement and watching TV the whole day is what gets you through it, then that's what you need to do in this moment. But I think that it could be for some people a goal to work through like what's something that I can find a little bit of happiness or a little bit of peace in this day. Maybe for me, it's going to visit a friend. Maybe it's driving from Muncie to Brooklyn. you know? So
Try the plan.
And go visit to one friend and give them a shalach mana. So at least I do feel like I connected to this holiday. So again, I'm saying whatever coping skill you need to do to get through the day, it's important to do that. But I do think it could be a goal to look through the day and say, what can I do today that I feel like I connect to myself as a person, as a woman?
Right.
You know, what can I do to connect to this holiday? What can I do to connect to other people? Kind of using the word of connection as like the guide. How can I find a little bit of connection, whether it's to myself, whether it's to society? How does that look for me? What is something small that I can do today to make it a day that I can look back and say like, oh, that was something. That meant something. It was a good day. At least you don't feel like you had to survive the day, but you actually got something out of it for yourself.
Preparation is so important. The more you prepare, and also to understand what is it that you want to get out of Purim.
And what is it that's bothering you?
And what is it that's bothering you? What is it that you want to get out of it? And then go and plan it. Like, and do something about it. So that way, prepare. The better off you go in with the right mindset, the more you're going to the likelihood of that the day is going to go much better for you.
Right. Because for an example, if you realize that drunk men are what's really hard for you, you might want to go to North Miami Beach. There's barely any drunk men there. I was there one year for Purim. I was like, where are the men? There's no yeshiva bachram. There's cute little families going over to each other. And I was like, what is happening? So if you can dig deep and find out what really bothers me about this holiday, then maybe you could prepare for something that can help you.
I think for me personally, like, what is the hardest about Purim? And, you know, in general, I do really love Purim. What I find the hardest is the pressure. And I think the pressure is, like I said earlier, of like the expectations of like getting the most out of the day. Like, it has to be fun, it has to be happy, it has to be exciting. But I think it's also the pressure of like, this is a day to daven, and you have to like get the most out of davening. So if the day is so busy, how am I also having time to daven? And how am I also having time to say mincha and to say tehillim? And a lot of times, like, I don't get to any of it. And like letting go of I should be doing that, or the pressure in terms of like everything being like amazing. So let's say in terms of like having pictures. Everybody is posting their pictures, and it's like, oh, that family looks so cute, and that family looks so cute, and they look so happy.
Good pictures this year. No, actually.
But then it becomes like a certain pressure.
Take professional pictures on Purim.
Or you do it the day before Purim. You don't have to do it on Purim.
That's a good idea. See?
When you brainstorm, you see how new things come
up. No, because if you make a list of like, what do I have so many pressures. I want to daven. I want to go to my friends. I want to dress cute. And you sit and you actually think about it and write down your list. You can make expectations of what can I do? I want to take you pictures. But on Purim, it gets so crazy. Dress up the day before. Right. Take you pictures. Boom. That's good. So you kind of, you look, you think a little bit. What's going to bother me? What's going to be hard for me? What do I want to get done? What are my expectations? How can I make that happen?
And also look at what didn't work last year and what did work. Use your past as a guide for what will work this year. If last year sitting in traffic was awful for me, I'm not going outside of the area then. Or, if last year all the costumes weren't organized, make them organized this year. So that way I know it's not going to get lost. We are not going to lose that clown shoe again. So it's sort of like preparing like in advance. Also, like the sugar highs are really bad. And like, I remember like, sometimes I'll eat breakfast or sometimes I'm just so rushed with Megillah and everything I forget. Then later on, I'm just cranky.
Right.
So it's like, oh, I didn't eat today. Make sure that I'm eating a normal meal before the Suda.
This can be very controversial, but like for me, exercise is really important. Like maybe sneak a little time to do exercise in the morning.
Yeah.
I know that's like a crazy ask because there's like Megillah and then the whole day, but like maybe there's some time to sneak off so that way I do feel not like I just ate tons of candy the whole day and like I haven't moved.
So I was on Purim, like I entered into like, someone's house for Shalach Manos, like, and one of the people who lived in the home were just like coming home from the gym. And as a kid, like I remember looking and being like, wait, like.
Right. You went to the gym on
Purim? You
Purim?
went to the gym on Purim? Like, to me, it felt like it's Shabbos or it's like a Yontif.
Right.
Like,
I mean, it is.
But it's funny, like, as a kid, like, how I perceived that is like, where's your costume?
Right.
Like,
and that might have been something that person needed so that way they could have the best rest of the day for their kids, for their family, for themselves.
Right. Like, in the beginning it was confusing. Like, as a kid, I don't think I could comprehend, like, why as an adult, like, not doing everything that us kids are doing. But now I completely understand why somebody would need that and why that would be so fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like where we're coming with this about like sitting down and like realizing like what is my triggers about the day and what can I do to make sure I get whatever expectations I need to meet on the day.
And once you decide that, be okay with your decision. Like, even if it's not what you thought your Purim would look like, even if it's not what everybody around you, like if you feel like, this person is doing this, but I'm going to work or I'm going to the gym or I am like, taking a rest for a bit, like to sort of like be content with the decision that you made because it works for you in your situation. Everybody has their own situation. But I want to go back because I think like one of the hardest things about Purim is the comparing and the contrasting and the jealousy of, like looking at like whose pictures are the cutest.
And who has really nice big shalach manas, because mine are definitely not going to be.
Yeah, exactly. Like who has a cute theme, like who got a good family picture and put it on their shalach manos beforehand, and who was the one that spent the most money on it, and who is the one.
I'm sure money comes up a lot for people.
Yeah.
I know for myself, it's very interesting actually, because I grew up where my mom gave out these really nice shalach manas. We're talking about like baked cakes, like cakes for people with orchid plants. You know what I mean? Yeah, actually. And I am like so fine with giving like nothing. I'm literally like making my few shalach manas, and after that it's like, oh, thank you so much, ran out. But I think it's like, yeah, that like comparing and contrasting for people could be really hard. And I think like for me, I'm so busy that I just don't have the time to like make a nice shalach manas. So I became so okay with that. Like I'm doing something really easy. You know, you talked about so many pressures that come up, and I think like even like who's like waiting for people to come to your house? Like, is anyone going to come?
Right. Like
and
how many friends
as
do I
I'm
have?
saying that, I can feel like for myself, like, oh wow, like yeah, I think that does come up for me every year. And I'm sure for so many people, like, oh, like how come that person didn't come? You know, and how come?
I think it's like a time where people like do accounting and a tallying of like how many friends do I have? Who really likes me? Like who's going to give me shalach manos? Who's not going to give me shalach manos? Like it becomes like a popularity contest a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I need to count like how many people should I even make shalach manos for? I'm like, how many people are going to come to me? 3? Alrighty, 3 shalach manos is what we're going to do this year. Sure, are you going to come 4? Yay.
We came last year.
I know. 4 now. Okay, got to go buy 4 shalach manos. But like I'm making light of it. But at the end of the day, like I think that like every year I'm left with a few extra ones.
Yeah.
You know, and can bring up insecurities for myself included of like,
right.
You know.
Yeah. Like I always like tell myself like a lot of my friends don't live in the area. So it's like there's no expectation that I'm going to them and that they're coming to me. And like sometimes like I'll send something in the mail, but other times like, yeah, I used to do that like, you know, for my friends in Israel, like to send something in the mail. And then like, yeah, but then over time it just got like crazy expensive. And I'm like, okay, I love you. Like
you'll get a text and a picture.
Exactly. But like it's just a way to like connect to say I'm thinking about you. Like, you know, you're still in my mind. But I think like with the locals, like that's the question of like, who am I sending to? Who am I not sending to? Like it becomes like accounting and just like a reminder. Like in high school it was definitely like that of like everyone like brought their shalach manos like 2 days before, and it was like, who's going to get, who's not going to get.
To school?
Yeah.
You didn't go to people's houses? We went to our friends' houses.
No.
I don't know if Brooklyn's different than Muncie. Yeah. It's too hard to get around in Brooklyn.
Well, you can't give to 30 people. You can't drive to 30 houses.
Well, you went to school 30 shalach manos?
A lot of times, yeah.
Really? Everyone did that?
Well, not everybody, but a lot of people. We looked forward to like the end of the day to see how many we were going home with.
Oh, it was so
like
nice.
Who
we went
could
to
carry
like
you know the most bags, and then you would go to a couple of friends. But if you think about it, if you live in Flatbush and your friend lives in Kensington and your other friend lives in Borough Park,
Muncie, like, everything's like
to get there. Right, Muncie's not as bad, even though the traffic over there has gotten
but
crazy.
Like back then it wasn't crazy. But you know, what one of my friends did last year, she just like texted like, "Hey, does everyone like want to come meet here?" Which I thought was nice.
That's really cute. Yeah,
but that's also like taking the privilege of having a friends group.
Right. Yeah, so there is a lot about like the friendships, like so besides for like the drunkenness and besides for the costumes and the expectations.
So basically, there is so much.
There's so much that's coming up.
Someone on Purim.
Yeah, there is a lot that's coming up, and like if you think about it, like it's 24 hours, not including the fast and not including Shushan Purim, but it's 24 hours. But within that 24 hours, like so many people's triggers could be hit upon.
Right, and like you add not eating right, you add sugar. You add drinking. You add not sleeping right. You add having your kids home for 3 days.
Yeah. And then it's Pesach coming up also.
Everything trigger is blown, right? Anything small, any small little insecurity of like, hey, how come that friend didn't come to me? You add not eating, woo. You add not sleeping, woo. And suddenly something small can be so crushingly overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes magnified. It gets more magnified than you would like it to be. And then there's the judgment of why is this happening to me? Like, what am I doing? What's going on? And so, like, there's feelings about the feelings that you're having. And before you know it, Purim can be a whole disaster.
Yeah.
And we don't want that.
Right. We want to set myself up.
Yes.
For a day of success.
So the theme of Purim and the theme of Adar is being happy and be besimcha. And I think that that's such a like triggering word of what does like happy really mean? What does simcha really mean? And I myself sometimes get confused of like happy, like am I happy? Is this happy? Right. Like what does happiness look like?
Am I supposed to be happy?
Am I supposed to be happy? Is that the goal? And I think like inherent in society is like you have to always be happy. The goal of life is to be happy. But then like what does happy feel like? And what does happy look like? Right. And I think that gets blurred. And I hope that we can like delve into that a bit today. So that way like we can gain an understanding of like for ourselves and for others, like what is happiness like really mean, and how do we attain it, and what does it feel like when we attain it?
Yeah, this bringing up a really funny story. When I was in 8th grade, I had like a tutor, so I would like go out of class and I would learn with her separately. And then at the end of the year, she gave me a book on happiness. I think that she saw something, but that was definitely not the solution.
Yeah, in seminary, there was this book called Feeling Happy by David Burns. And I think it was like just talking about like schemas and like cognitive distortions and like how our mind plays tricks with us. But there are so many books out there about happiness because people are running towards happiness of saying, I have to be happy, I have to be happy. But like, do we even know what that means?
Right.
And, you know, one of the things, like my first association to like what is happiness is like the more materialistic things you have, like the more it's going to make you happy, or the more you are investing towards something, the more happy you're going to be. But I don't know if that's necessarily true. Like the more you have is not necessarily the more happiness.
Yeah, I think also like fun. Like one of my earlier associations is like you're happy if you're having fun.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's fun happiness.
Right. Like fun is like laughing and
adrenaline
just like,
high.
Yeah, on a high.
Vacation.
Exactly. Like active. Like
going
having
shopping
so much.
is fun. Buying a lot of things. So it like kind of ties into the materialism. I'm like, oh yeah, then I'm happy.
Right. Like, but is that really happy?
Right. And I think we see like a lot of people suffering from addiction. We see that they kind of have that trait of where they're like chasing the next high, right?
Yeah.
So they need to do things that are super fun and they need to run after and do things like that have the adrenaline pumping, like going for a run or going skiing because that kind of keeps them not using drugs. And a lot of the work is learning to live at like a lower base level life.
Yeah.
Because happiness isn't running after the next thing in your career or the next materialistic or having the funnest day ever. Happiness, I mean, I don't know what the definition of happiness is, but right now what's coming up to me is like, it's living this like kind of satisfied, content life and being okay with who you are and the people that you surround yourself with. If that's like a description that I would just throw out there. And like, that's a very lofty goal, but I think like people tend to think that like, no, happiness is having the funnest day ever or buying the most things and just living a life on a high.
Right. It's almost like we need to live life as a 10, but life is not always a 10. Sometimes it's a 1, 2, 3. Sometimes it's a 6. Like life is never just a straight line, and that straight line of just like happiness.
Right.
Like,
and it's definitely, even if it is a straight line, it's not a straight line of 10.
Right. No, it's not a
more
straight
in
line
the
of
middle,
10.
right?
Yeah.
So 1 being a bad day, 10 being the best day. Happiness is being able to slowly go kind of up and down without shooting up and down.
Right. I sort of like want to obliterate the word like happiness just because like it's just too confusing. Like I think like with like happiness, like what does it mean? Like you said before, it's like satisfaction. It's just like a certain contentness. Like, and I think like, you know, obviously like life should be generally like neutral. And then there's some ups and a little bit of downs, but like it shouldn't be like so far from the center.
Exactly.
Like but if we're expecting it to be like a peak and like an extreme, like amazing things, like that's not realistic.
If you want to live life on a 10, I think you're going to be really disappointed. And we're going to see that leading to people to using substances to make them feel a 10 because we're not naturally meant to feel at level 10.
Right. Like some days are just
we're supposed to have a good day once in a while that we feel at 10 if we do something really fun. And then sometimes we do feel that low in the next day, but that's life.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's some days that are more exciting. There's some days that are less exciting. There's some days that nothing goes on. There's some days that tons of things go on. I think there's an expectation of like, you always have to be doing something and there always has to be something going on and you always have to be really excited about it or something to look forward to and have tons of fun. And like, it's important to have something to look forward to, but that doesn't mean that you're going to have a thrill every day. Right. Every day is not a thrill. Some days are, you know, go to work, do what you have to do, like raise a family, and it's just pretty neutral. It's not going to be this like, wow, amazing. And, you know, sometimes like I find like if I have like a regular day, flat day, like, you know, just go to work, do what I have to do. But afterwards, when I'm talking to somebody about that day, I can make it more exciting than it actually was, like just to make me feel more excited about it.
Okay.
So like reflecting on it in a more thrilling way of like, do you want to hear this funny thing? So I'll give you an example. So on Shabbos, we take this little shortcut. And so we got permission from like one of the neighbors. We don't really know them so well, but they gave us permission to like do a shortcut. So that way like it's closer to shul. And as we're walking home from shul, like we see somebody pulling up in the driveway and they say to us, it's private property. And I'm thinking private property, like we have permission to go on this private property. So like they're probably just a visitor and they don't realize. And so we're like, no, we got permission from this person. And they're like, well, that's not their house. Their house is on the other side. And at that moment, I felt like, oh my goodness, I'm back into like, you know, getting in trouble from the principal's office. Like, oh no, this is so not like me. So afterwards, though, I was telling my friend the story. And when I told the story, like, I said it a lot more exciting than it was when it actually happened. And that made me more excited about the story. So that made the day exciting. Rather than what happened, it was my perception of it and how I related over. And I think we do that a lot with like stories of like, it wasn't so funny in the moment necessarily. But when we talk about it with somebody and we connect with somebody over the story, it just becomes like so much more dramatic and so much more exciting that that's what gives us more satisfaction. And I think like when we use the word like, let's say happiness or satisfaction is the more people we're going to have in our life and the more connection we're going to have in our life, the more satisfied we're going to feel. Going through life alone is dull. You can have the funniest thing happen, but if you have no one to share it with, it's not going to be fun.
Right.
You can have an experience or do an activity, but if it's not with another person, it's not exciting. And if it's not with a person that you connect with. So connection is what brings the satisfaction. And I think like if we're looking for the thrill through an activity or looking through a thrill through buying something or materialism or having like a certain experience, the experience is only as good as the person or the people that you're with in that moment.
Yeah.
And so maybe like that's the key towards happiness is who are you around? Who are you with? Like some of the best like, exciting things for me were just sitting with friends doing nothing.
Right.
Just talking, just connecting, just, over like a dinner or something. It doesn't need to be this like extreme high of like, it didn't look like a high, but it felt like a high. And I think we have to distinguish between like what looks like a high is not necessarily what feels like a high. And so we have to see what feels like a high for us. What does that connection feel like?
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. Like I remember like in seminary, I had like a group of it was like Shabbos before Lag Omer and like a group of friends were going to Meron. And then like my friends who I wanted to hang out with, they were going to like Yam Melch just to chill. And I was like, no, it's like my seminary year. Like I need to like have the Lag Omer experience. So I went with a different group of friends that like I wasn't really connecting with and vibing with. Like I had such a bad Shabbos. I mean, besides the point that like we literally found a dirty diaper in the apartment that we were renting. Yeah, like besides the point that we waited 6 hours to get a bus back to Yerushalayim. Besides that point. It wasn't so fun. And then like I come back to the dorm and like my friends were at Yam Melch had this like big tan and like all relaxed. And I'm just like, I chose the experience over the people. And like that was a lesson where I was like, it doesn't matter what you're doing. No. If you're with the right people, you're gonna have the better trip. And I needed to do the Lag Omer experience. I didn't have such a great time. And it was a big lesson to me in the moment of that like I need to pick people over what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's not about what you're doing. It's about who you're with.
Exactly. And when you're with good people, like that connection and that belonging feels so much more amazing than any activity. Like I've done like some crazy activities, but if I didn't do it with somebody, that I didn't like, it was awful.
I think that when we surround ourselves with the wrong people, that could be hard. And I think that's what comes up for a lot of people, like connecting it back to Purim. Is that people don't always have a choice who they're hanging out with Purim. It's let's say family, and it might not be the people that make you feel the best in the moment.
Yeah. And also like they might not be available, like availability of people. Like it takes time. Like we said in our friends episode, right? We talk a lot about like how you're surrounding yourself by people. And it's so important to like connect with friends and to find friends and put effort and to pay for friends. But not always can you get that friend or get that person who you really like and connect with. You can't always choose who you're going to be around, and not everyone is available. And especially as we get older, like I find like it's so much harder. Everyone has so many more responsibilities. Like to get friends to come over for Shabbos is not as easy as it used to be. And so like we have to plan months in advance in order to work, but then last minute things pop up and it doesn't always work out. And so, but we know that connection with the right people feels so much better than doing it.
I think we talked a lot about like happiness and like the highs. Of people like trying to attain a high to feel happy. Let's talk a little bit about like the lows, because I always like to think of like, let's say life is like this baseline. So here's the highs, here's the lows, and life is like, we're trying to stay in the middle. So we kind of touched upon like the highs that people are trying to attain to feel happy. I want to talk about people that want to feel happy but are feeling so low. People who are on the bottom end of the spectrum and what they can do to feel okay with where they're at in the moment and how to get more to baseline.
Right.
There's certain people like, just because of life situation or chemical imbalances that are feeling life a little bit on a low, and they want to be neutral. They want to be happy. They want to feel fulfilled and satisfied. And I think Purim can bring up a lot of that for people on that day of like, look, everyone's running around and smiling and, maybe I can't get out of bed. Maybe I didn't have the energy to really think of a costume this year.
So I think like, when and we talked a lot about like going from a high to a neutral, like if you were expecting the high, like you should just settle for the neutral a bit and recognize that that's what most of life looks like. And I think like we should talk a little bit about like if somebody is feeling depressed or down, like what can they do to get to a more neutral space, or what can they do to get through Purim? Because Purim then is like the antithesis of what it is and the opposite of what it is that they are experiencing. So it's like feeling depressed. but then I'm told be happy.
Right.
Or
Or then
have
everyone
fun.
around me is like laughing and smiling and trying to like
Yeah.
drag me into the meal. You know,
that's
or
like the
something
worst.
else.
It's like if you're like feeling down, everybody else is like, no, perk up a bit, or be
Right.
happier. And it's like, no, like
Why are you
it's
not
like
dressed?
it's a mismatch.
Where's your Charlotte Manas? Why are you
Right.
not smiling? Why are you not joining for the meal? You
Right.
know, all these things could just make the place that you're being so much harder to be in.
Right, exactly.
I think
like
that's
sometimes like match the room. Like sometimes you might not like leave open the opportunity for it to go well.
right.
Because like you
that
might
is huge because
Yeah.
like, if you're just like, no, this, I'm feeling depressed or I am depressed and this is not the day for me. You're not leaving room to change it.
Exactly.
If you're like, you know what? Yeah, maybe I didn't get dressed this year, but maybe I can go see what everyone's costume's like and just like be open to the space of like, maybe it will make me feel a little better to see like all my nieces and nephews dressed up.
Right. Even if the depression stays, give yourself the opportunity for it to change. Give
That's
yourself
really
the
good.
opportunity to think differently, to see something. Like you never know, like maybe even one thing will make you smile. One
Right.
thing will make you feel like, oh, that's a cute costume.
Right. Well,
Or
if you're
that's a
not
cute-
open to the possibility, then for sure nothing's changing.
Right.
Like that's it, because it all starts with ourselves and our
Mhm.
mind. So if you're not open to it, we're not saying anything is going to change if you are open to the possibility, but at least you're trying,
Yeah.
or at least there's a chance for it to happen.
Exactly. Like keep your eyes open and also structure yourself in a way that you have opportunities. So plan to go out, plan to be around people, plan to do something that has the potential to work out.
Right.
So that way, like if it does, great. But it's almost like, sometimes like with depression, like people are stuck in bed and they just feel heavy. Their body feels heavy. Getting dressed feels heavy. Every single task feels so heavy. And in that moment, like we can't minimize like how hard it is to just pull through mundane tasks.
Right.
But sometimes within that, there's a little spark of energy, or you start seeing a little bit more color in your day. And you then can push yourself into the structure that you've created before. So if you planned something, then it can force you to do it.
Right. Also, like opportunity begets opportunity. I
Mhm.
feel like that. So if you're going to stay in your room the whole day, then nothing's happening. Nothing's
Exactly.
changing. You go outside and you're like, you know what? I will take a 10-minute walk. You might then meet a dancing group of drunk boys, and that might bring you some joy for some reason.
Exactly.
So you're giving yourself the opportunity
Yes.
to come across another opportunity.
Right.
You might say, you know what? Fine. I'll go visit that one friend that accepts me the way I am. And then when you're visiting that one friend, she might be like, hey, I'm going to a different friend. Will you come with me?
Mhm.
But if you're going to stay in your room, then nothing's changing for sure.
Right. I really love that because like I don't think it's just like if somebody who's feeling down and depressed, like, for them to like take that approach. I think with everybody to take that
this
approach.
is like totally a life
Yeah.
approach. 100%.
Like it's just like a life approach of like I'm gonna plan as much as I can and in the hopes that something is gonna hit. It's like,
Yeah.
playing darts where like you throw a bunch of them and you hope that one hits the center. So it's like planning a bunch of things and some of them are gonna make you feel great and some of them are not. But you're hoping that some will
this
make
is
you
like
feel great.
literally like a life thing about the opportunity thing. Like even just I remember when I moved back to America from Israel and I was like, I need a job, and I wasn't finding anything I liked. I was like, you know what, just take one.
Yeah.
Because you're going to meet people from
Exactly.
that job. So I took a job that I didn't like, and then that led me to meet people, and then I got a different job. But like you just have to start somewhere.
Right.
So this is with everything. Like, oh, I'm so bad at working out. Well, just go to a workout class. Maybe you'll meet a friend. Maybe you'll meet a new idea. So everything, like opportunities kind of just bring on new opportunities
Mhm.
always, no matter where you are in your life.
You just have to do the action. Like you just have to cross the threshold in
Exactly.
order to allow it for you to be a receptor for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And like in terms of like also like if somebody is feeling depressed as well, like and they're looking at everybody else and like they're constantly feeling like, why am I not like that? Like why can't I be like that? I think there's like also just like a certain acceptance of like this is where I'm at now.
Right.
Like I've done all the I've done everything to give myself the most opportunities, but like I'm gonna meet myself where I'm at because if we fight ourselves or we fight our emotions at that moment, then it just makes it worse. And we don't want to escalate it. We want to like have a certain acceptance of like this is just what the day is gonna be. This is just what's happening. This is just how I'm feeling. I can't necessarily like do much to change it. We have to like have an acceptance while also planning, while also hoping for something to change.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. So today we spoke about like happiness and how happiness is so confusing and how we can have like a different understanding of what happiness actually is rather than like what we've been told to think about it.
Yeah. It was great. It was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.